we're going to show you how to add, edit, evaluate the submitted pay request. So let's get started. Okay, so this slide is just a general overview of how the process works. In subsequent slides, we're going to talk about this process in detail. But typically what happens first is the contractor is going to submit a contractor pay request worksheet report. They're going to print it out. They're going to meet with the government to determine earnings for the activities in that pay request. So after the meeting, the contractor is going to load the pay request either manually or via an SDEF import into RMS. And in accordance with the contract clause, prompt payment for construction contracts, payments are required to be processed within 14 calendar days of receipt of proper invoice. So when the government receives a pay request from the contractor, the government should receive the signed contractor's prompt payment certification in the contractor's document package folder. This document will be automatically added to the appropriate contract file folder along with the signed ENG Form 93. If the pay request is correct and indicates earnings that were discussed, the government will process the pay request in RMS, generate and sign an ENG Form 93, and then this document will automatically upload to the contract file folder along with other attachments. Okay, so this is the initial step, the first bullet point from the previous slide. So the contractor is going to print out a contractor pay request worksheet, and they're going to enter in the percentage of work that was completed or the dollars for each activity in the progress payment submodule, and they'll generate the contractor pay request. And as I mentioned before, the next thing is to walk the site with the contractor, evaluate and agree on the entered percentage or dollars. And after the meeting, the contractor will load the agreed to earnings and submit the invoice. Okay, so to print the contractor pay request worksheet, again, from the administration tab, you're going to click on the contract reports button, as you can see highlighted on the slide. This is going to bring you to the contract reports page. And as you can see, we have highlighted the contractor pay request worksheet. And here's a sample or an example of a sample contractor pay request worksheet. And again, you're going to print that out for your meeting with the government. Okay, so the prerequisites to a progress payment, make sure that you have the actual NTP dates, the notice to proceed date, and again, the scheduler must input that date. It's very important that your activities are balanced. You make sure that you have an updated SDEF import, and make sure that the contractor has the completed invoice. So again, you'll not navigate to the Finance tab, and you're going to select the progress payment. Okay, so under the progress payment submodule, you can see all the historical progress payments, and the government can add a new pay request, but typically the contractor completes the pay request in RMS. If an NAS is required, the contractor is going to import the SDEF file into RMS. So you're going to highlight the invoice. You're going to select the edit button, which you can see in the top left corner. And one common problem that I'll highlight here is that finances are not properly balanced. So a contractor may contact you and inform you that they can't process a pay request because of an error message that they get. And that error message states that the finances are not properly balanced. The contractor can fix the variance in RMS, but must make the correction in the NAS. Okay, and as always, you can always submit a help desk ticket if needed. Please don't wait. It could generate interest if the payment is not paid promptly. Okay, so from the progress payment screen, the main view is going to show you the pay period dates. It's going to also show you the date the previous payment was approved in CEFMS, the earnings to date and earnings this period. It will also show you any deductions and refunds. And finally, it shows you the amount due. So again, you're going to highlight the invoice that you're going to review and press the edit button with the edit button in the top left-hand corner. Okay, now you're on the Invoice tab, and if needed, you can edit the receive date, the payment invoice date, and the pay period. You're also going to check the payment terms, and if they need to be changed, you'll have to go to CEFMS for that. You also have to, you can also check the payee office, and again, that information comes from CEFMS. You can enter names for signatures, and a common error on this page is that changes made to the invoice not saved happens when the invoice is left open for longer than 15 minutes with no activity and the back button was not used. So make sure that if you enter information on this screen, that you make sure that you hit the back button to save your information. Okay, some common errors on this screen is not entering all the dates. You have to make sure you verify the pay period from and through dates. An important point here is that the payment invoice date cannot be before the pay period through date. Okay, the invoice received has to be the same or later than the payment invoice date. Okay, and just a reminder that RMS will not complete the ENG 93 if there are errors with these dates. Okay, so on this screen, the obligation payment priority screen, you're going to check the payment priority. You can see in the far right column is the payment priority column. Normally, this is not an issue unless there's an other than pre-planned payment of obligations is selected. Okay, so again, this is would be a very fair, rare issue because typically it's going to follow the payment priority listed here. Okay, here's where you can check the payment terms. And again, the payment terms dictate when the contractor will be paid. So again, as mentioned before, the prompt payment for construction contracts, the PPA Act, payments are required to be processed within 14 calendar days. Now, the most common error that happens here is that the prompt pay indicator is not marked in CEFMS when the obligation is initially created. Okay, so this error can only be changed in CEFMS, and the RMS Center is not allowed to provide CEFMS guidance. Okay, so from the requested activity earnings tab, as you can see, we're working from left to right across the invoice screen. This view shows the amounts being requested against the pay activities. Now, they can be returned, or the amounts can be adjusted in the allowed activity earnings tab, which we'll get to in the next screen. Now, some typical errors that can happen here is that the contractor does not enter the paid to amount. RMS is going to use the previous total. So the current paid to date is calculated request this period. So incorrect activities paid is another error. Common error, it requires a zero payment to adjust the amounts. It can happen when the activity IDs change from the SDEF upload. And if you do have a very busy screen, you can use these blue sort tile options to assist you with your review, to filter it down and make it easier for you. Okay, moving over to the Allowed Activities Earnings tab, the government can reduce the requested earnings. The process, but you're going to process this in accordance with your district policy. Again, typically you may just send it back for corrections, but depending upon your policy, you might make the changes here in this screen. And as mentioned in the previous slide, again, if you have several activities, you can use the blue sort tiles to sort and to filter down your screen to make it easier to manage. Okay, now we're at the Subcontractor Earnings tab, and this is where the subcontractor withholdings must be added in this tab. So if the contractor is deducting from a subcontractor, then the amount will show as a negative amount for the additional earnings this period on the Allowed Activity Earnings tab. Okay, moving again to the right to the Allowed CLIN Earnings tab. The subcontractor withholdings must be added in this tab, and it's used just to double check the amounts being processed against each CLIN. Okay, moving to the Additional Earnings tab, you can review the listed amounts. You can select the calculation method from the drop-down menu, and it shows a sum of subcontractor deductions and sum of allowed earnings to date. So this is a blown up screenshot of what will be displayed when you click on the drop-down menu for the calculation method. So again, I'm not gonna read all of the verbiage here, but if you do click on this drop-down menu, it will give you a more detailed definition of the two calculation methods, the standard and the periodic. Okay, so once you have completed all of the information, the next thing that you want to do is you're going to click on the total allowed earnings box that you see at the bottom right-hand corner. Okay, once you go to the Obligations tab, you're going to verify the correct CEFMS obligations are going to be charged. Again, changes can be made to the amounts, and the percentage will be used to make the payment. Retainage, other deduction refunds can be added. Check the ENG 93 completed to create an ENG 93 and prepare the document for signing. So some common errors that can take place here is when you check the ENG 93 box, it does not send the payment to CEFMS. So a lot of people think that automatically happens. It doesn't. So you're going to need to go to the document package, which we'll get to in a moment, sign it, and then send it off to CEFMS. And as I said, we'll cover that in subsequent slides. Another common error is that payment assigned to the incorrect obligation, and that could lead to overbilling. So again, when all else fails, you can't get it fixed, you can always submit a help desk ticket. Again, don't wait to do this. Don't wait to get the help, because again, you do not want to exceed the pay date. Okay, so now we're at the Document Packages tab, and you have the contractor package contains files the contractor is required to submit with payment. And then you have the government package, which contains the signed ENG 93 and any other required documents. Okay, so from the government document package folder view, here you can perform the following task. And as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, you can generate a letter to the contractor. You can electronically sign the ENG Form 93. And you can also use the drag and drop feature to attach supporting documents. So to view the signed ENG 93 form, you would click on the View Document button, which you see highlighted there. And one important note is that the contractor will not see any documents added to the government document package. Okay, so again, if you want to sign documents, you're going to click on the sign selected documents. You're going to select the ENG 93 report. And as you can see, there are two signature fields, one for the preparer and one for the approver. Okay, after all necessary documents have been signed and any additional notes have been added, you're going to select the complete package button, which you see in the lower right-hand corner. Okay, going back, as you can see on this slide, that the ENG 93 form now shows as signed, as you can see highlighted. And then the next step is you're going to navigate back to the Obligations tab from the Document Package tab. Okay. Once you're at the Obligations tab, you're going to select the Send Payment to CEFMS, which you can see at the bottom right-hand part of the page. And at this point, the signed ENG 93 will be sent to CEFMS. This payment is now complete in RMS and is ready in CEFMS for core approval. Okay, the last thing I want to go over is the reports that you have available to you. So up in the right-hand corner, you can see there's a reports button. And if you were to click on it, you can see that there are 4 different options, 4 different reports that you can look at. One being a prompt pay report. The second is an ENG 93 report. The third being a contract file report. And last is a check report to see checks that have already been submitted. So the data that you're going to see on each of these reports depends upon the stage of the invoice that's being processed. And it will not show any signatures that had been applied by the contractor. Okay, so here's a sample of what a prompt pay report will look like. Again, you can see the two pages here. Next is a sample of an ENG 93 report. This slide shows page 1 of the ENG 93 report. And again, the information displayed here will be determined how far you are in the process of the invoice. And this next slide shows you pages 2 and 3 of the ENG 93 report, what that looks like and the information that it contains. Okay, the next report is a contract file report, and this is going to show any documents that are attached to the payment that would be added to the contract file. And then the last report that you can pull up is a check report. So if there's already been checks that have been entered, you can select on that check and you can see the total amount that was paid, the check number, and the date. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor up for any questions that may have been entered in the chat, or if anyone wants to call out their question.
I have a question. I was curious when the recording is going to be posted to share with coworkers.
The recording may take 5 days to post, depending on how much editing we have to do. We have to review it to make sure that there's no, information that shouldn't be showing before it's posted. So 5 days max is your final answer, and it will be posted on the website. We'll send out a message.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we had a question, the contract file report, is that based off the government package other than the ENG 93?
So yes and no. The thing is all document packages are added to the contract file. So even if it's in the contractor document package or the government document package, it is going to go to the contract file. Does that answer the question?
The example you showed was blank. And I guess I'm seeing it blank most of the time. I was just wondering why it's coming up blank.
Oh, you're talking about the report inside of the invoice itself when you click on the reports button, yes?
Yes. Mhm.
That one is supposed to show the government document package, yes. Right now, it's we're in the process of updating that particular report. It's still got some things that needs to be adjusted, and eventually it will be correct. Right now, you may not see anything in that document package until it's completely finished.
Okay, thanks.
So to answer the question, there's a way for the contractor to sign. That is actually, that process is being created currently and being tested. And in the next few releases, that functionality will exist in RMS for the contractor to sign the ENG 93. And then looks like we got another question with the slides say the COR and ACO sign. In our office, I process the pay and sign, and the ACO signs. Is that correct? That would have to really depend upon your office's policy of who's the person with the contractual power to pay and who they've assigned to be the preparer, etc. So I would follow your district policy. And that's why they're labeled, you know, the preparer is the basic. It doesn't really specify a specific person, just who actually did prepare in that work.
So there was a question earlier on in the chat about errors. What happens if you get a bunch of errors at the beginning? And I know the response was, well, it depends on what the errors are. If somebody, and I'm trying to scroll back up to see who asked the question, because if there's a specific error that you keep getting over and over, or if there's something specific that you want us to speak to, you know.
Oh, yes, I remember I asked that question. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes we receive a payment request from the contractor, and then when we go back and verify the quantity of the amount of work that was done, they may not match. Let's say it for a particular features of work, it says it's 50% done, but out in the field is only 20% done. Then we can go ahead and tell the contractor this is not accurate. Can you go ahead and fix that? I know this has to be done within 14 days, and otherwise we're going to jump into a penalty, interest to the government, something like that.
So if the contractor isn't submitting stuff that's accurate, then really to the point in which they actually provide an accurate package and complete package, then that's when the timer would start. So if you have, I mean, of course you don't want to delay on going and disputing it with them, but you can also make that agreement without them having to necessarily resubmit. You can change it in the obligations tab and say, okay, actually the government can overwrite, okay, we're going to say this much, but we're going to pay this much, but I would recommend to have concurrence with that contractor when you're going to be doing that. And I've done it in the past before, but I prefer to actually have them resubmit it just under what we agreed to, just to make sure that there's no pushback at a later date. But really, once they have the point, I guess the main point is that they actually have, somebody responded in the chat, rejected if they don't have it, things aren't correct. Really, we're not going to start counting that clock until they have everything up to date and accurate. So we don't put the date of the invoice received until we have all that information accurate and complete.
Thank you.
And then there, just to touch base on what was in the chat for those that maybe can't see it, there was also a comment made about signatures overlapping on the ENG 93. And I know Jennifer responded that that's usually only if the preparer and the approver are the same person and signing at the same time. That issue will be corrected in our next release. It says also, if you are the preparer and the approver, when you sign as the approver, you need to change the digital signature position or back out of the invoice before trying to sign as the approver. Now, Andrea Hinkle from headquarters did comment back and say that they should not be the same person, that just want to make sure I say this right. Please note that from a process standpoint, the same person should not be signing as the preparer and approver. There should be two separate people signing in those areas to ensure that checks on the pay request have been performed. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that in case, like I said, some of you can't see the chat if you're just dialing in or what have you. So are there any other questions?
Yeah, one more question. Is there any procedures to deal with a problem like this? Let's say after we process the payment request and we find out that we overpaid for a particular the features of work. Is it possible to retrieve that money, or what's the procedures from that point on?
You can have the contractor give you a refund.
If you haven't approved the payment in CEFMS yet, you could always redo the payment in RMS and correct it.
Yeah, but if you've already paid it and at that point you need the refund, you have to go through Millington on that, and it is sort of a hassle, but you can get it.
There would be other ways that you could try to shift some of those costs, but you would definitely have to speak with contracting and Office of Counsel.
Thank you.
All right, there was another question about, can you go over the stored materials in the additional earnings tab? Anita, can your team do that? Or Jennifer?
My apologies. I was a little late
Okay.
trying to find my mute button. Specifically for the stored materials and additional earnings tab, what question do you have specifically about that? We can talk a little bit about it, but mostly it depends on if your contract is allowed to have additional earnings or stored materials. If you do have the option for your contract to have additional earnings tab, the contractor can, give me just a second. I'm trying to share my screen while I'm talking. Bond payments as well. I will leave the bond payments question to James, as he is more familiar with that than I am, but I will go ahead and share my screen, talk about additional earnings. Okay, so right now, the only one that I have is already completed, so I'll just go ahead and open up and show you. The additional earnings actually kind of ties into the bond payments, because usually if a contractor is requesting bond payments, there's not going to necessarily be an activity that's associated with that, and they would request that down here in the additional earnings. So as you can see on my screen right now, this contract is specifically set up to allow the additional earnings to be included. And as you can see, the very last one is performance and payment bonds. So if the contractor is requesting payment for the performance or payment bonds, they can enter that information in here. For additional stored material, if they have material that's stored on site that they want or need to get paid for whatever reason, they can request it here. Whether or not it's allowed is dependent upon your district. And then the preparatory work, any preparatory work that they have to do, if they want to get paid for that, that would fall under additional earnings, and they would request that here. Now, when you receive the invoice, you will see the requested information right here that this is the total. It's going to be the sum of the previous earnings plus the to date, and then what they're requesting for this contract will show up in the right-hand column. Does that answer your question?
Yes, we just ran into a problem with it always showing up where we had to, whenever we went to the obligations, if we didn't correct something in this screen, because the contractor had put in the additional earnings in the pay request, it was part of an activity, and then they entered it here too, and it just messed things up. And if we didn't correct it or delete it out like a negative, it kept showing that we still owed them that after we had already paid them. So I wasn't sure how that actually.
So the additional earnings is only for things that do not have pay activity. So if your contractor is requesting it in a pay activity and then putting it in the additional earnings, it's like they're double dipping. So you'll want to return that contract to them for corrections and let them know, hey, you've got this in the pay activity. You can't request this here as well.
Okay, that was probably the issue. We were just deducting it out of that screen. We weren't paying them twice, but it just kept showing up there too, and wasn't sure why.
Yeah, so that would need to be corrected in the original invoice that it's done. And if you've gone a couple of invoices out, I would suggest putting in a help desk ticket to see if we can correct that or not. But if it's already been submitted to CEFMS, we may not be able to change that. And you might have to correct that for every single invoice, just depending.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You are welcome. Are there any other questions?
I had a question on, we've had several instances where, I mean, it's set up appropriate, only one person can be in there, with, right authority at a time, but we've had some instances where people have logged out, but it's holding them as the person that still has active control in the invoice, even though they've exited RMS, exited the program, rebooted. Is there anything we're doing on our end that's causing that, or is that just something that we need to just keep going back to RMS Center to have that person exited from that status in the system? Over.
There are two. Thank you. There are two reasons that error can occur. The first reason is when a user hits the X button or otherwise gets out of RMS without clicking on the back button before leaving. So since I'm in this invoice right now, if I were to hit the X button, then I would remain locked on this invoice because I didn't properly sign out or get out of the system. Even if I hit one of these other buttons, these other navigation buttons, the menu, the contract selection, or the contract menu, any of these ones, it's possible that it could also happen there. So it's very critical that when you're getting out of the invoice, you make sure you hit back. The other reason that this can happen is if the internet connection between whoever's working on the invoice and our servers gets interrupted for any particular reason, it will also see that as the same issue. So as long as you're sure that everybody is getting out of the invoice like they are supposed to be getting out of the invoice and you're still having this issue, please give us a call. I've posted the chat number for the help desk if you need it, and we can go through and we can get that taken care of for you. And if you call us, usually we can get it resolved within 30 minutes at least, probably less, depending on who's on shift at the time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, we get it resolved. So if somebody doesn't back out first, that's going to cause that. I'm wondering, what's the issue if we just, anytime they leave it, that terminates their control on it?
Usually it's because they're improperly closing down the invoice.
I understand that, but could you close it down by the back button or the X button, or even if you break internet connectivity? I don't understand why we're holding that user as the one that's holding the invoice open, even in those situations.
That has to do with a caching issue, and that's something that we are working on. If you see that someone's in there, ask them to go back into the invoice and hit back out. And see if that fixes it. If not, just submit a ticket and we'll do some review on that to figure out what's going on.
Okay, thanks.
So for the person that was asking questions about bond, if it looks like they do things slightly differently and they have the bonds done in an activity instead of the additional earnings tab.
All right, are there any other questions? All right, well, but give it a second. Just a reminder that this training was recorded and it will be posted on the RMS website. The training slides were posted already on the RMS SharePoint site, which we put the link a couple of times in the chat. If you still need it for some reason, just let me know. You can send an email to our PMO inbox and somebody will send you the link or send you the slides. We also have our quarterly beginner session starting today in about 45 minutes if anybody would like to attend that. And again, we thank you for dialing in and participating. And there was a question about if we would send this a calendar invite next time. We can. The reason we didn't this time was because we try to send everything out using the BCC button, because then people can't reply to all. However, the calendar does not allow that. So we would have to send it out just on the to line. And we're happy to do that. Just a heads up though, if somebody replies to all for some reason on that calendar invite, then everybody will get it. So that's, again, just a heads up, but we can definitely send out the calendar invite with the information, but always check the RMS website. We have it all posted there along with the links to actually joining the training, as well as the dates and the times. And then I've also posted it again on the RMS SharePoint site under the announcements. So you can check there as well for the the slides as well as the training dates and times and information. And then of course I put the WebEx information in the announcement as well. So, so again, thank y'all. And I will send y'all the, let me see. I had the link copied and pasted, and now I don't have it handy. So I will get it in just a second though for the SharePoint.
Carrie, I have another quick question. I have a user who's asking if they can get a certificate to count towards the core 80-hour CLPs. Do we have that?
We don't have that. That was a topic of discussion I was going to have with headquarters. We don't provide certificates for the trainings. So that's something though that's on our list of discussion topics with headquarters. Okay, and here is the link to the SharePoint. I'm putting it again in there right now. And then, like I said, you go to the left-hand side to shared documents. That will take you to the slides. And then if you just click the home button, then that's where all of the announcements are for the brown bag. When we changed our help desk phone number, it was posted there, and several other things. So you can check there as well for that. All right, there's no other questions. We will wrap this up. And again, thank y'all for your time. And if y'all have any issues with anything, please make sure you're calling or putting in a ticket with the RMS help desk. That helps us track the issues so that we make sure they get resolved, and then also that we address them in future trainings if it becomes an issue for multiple people. Oh, there's one more. It says our process is to have the comparison to CEFMS and the ACO signs. That will create an ENG 93 with only one signature. Is that an issue that will prevent payment?
That should not prevent payment. This is my understanding of how CEFMS wants it. And if this doesn't answer your questions, then you'll probably have to reach out to CEFMS themselves in order to get an answer. And that is, as long as there is one signature on the ENG 93 before it is sent to CEFMS, it should be okay, because I've heard a lot of districts that have the ACO sign in, or someone else signs in CEFMS, not inside RMS. But you do need to have one signature. CEFMS is requiring that one signature be present on the ENG 93 prior to it being sent to CEFMS. And it shouldn't prevent payment, although if it does come back from CEFMS with an error, you might have to go into CEFMS itself. But honestly, if you just go in and have someone sign it before they send it off, that will take care of it. Does that answer your question? You are correct. RMS is not requiring a signed version at this time. However, in the upcoming releases, that will change. Basically, when you click on the send to CEFMS, it will have you sign it at that time. So just be aware. Right now, we don't force it, but CEFMS is going to start implementing those reinforcements. And if it gets sent to CEFMS and comes back with an error, it's because it must be signed by at least one person.
Hey, Jennifer, so her commented, said, so we will no longer be able to sign outside of RMS for the ENG 93?
If you sign outside of RMS for the ENG 93 and upload it into RMS and check the box that says it's manually signed, then you should be able to do it that way.
So I'll say when we actually push the update, we'll make sure to include that in upcoming training sessions. And then, of course, when we do releases, we do post the release notes on the RMS website as well. So when you when we do have an update go out that changes things or updates things, you can go to the RMS website as well and see what those release notes were, and it'll tell you what was included in that update. All right. Well, we are officially over, I believe, overtime. No, we still have 10 minutes. I take that back. Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And again, we'll get this posted to the website within the next, at most 5 days, hopefully sooner. And then, like I said, you can refer to the RMS SharePoint site for some information. And then, of course, always check the RMS website for information on not just the training, but also outages and release notes as well. So thank you for your time. I hope y'all have a great rest of your day.